بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. So the topic for today was how to uplift the intellect of a given community, the aql of a given community. And before I start, I want to just make one note that when you look at the Shia world, actually the Khojis are very successful compared to other groups of people in relation to education. They have difficulties also, but in relation to education, in comparison to many other groups of people, they are ahead, and that is to be commended. Yes, they do have faults of their own. I may raise one or two of them. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. But this aspect is to be lauded in any case. Okay, I'll first start with a small introduction, and then we'll enter the main theme, inshallah. The first question is knowledge. Is knowledge something material and physical or immaterial? Okay, and here you should have answered knowledge is immaterial. There's nothing physical about the knowledge that we have. The different forms of knowledge which I perceive, the very fact that knowledge is a perception, it's immaterial. And so the question is, if knowledge is immaterial and I have knowledge, who is giving me this knowledge? Because at 2 years of age I have a degree of knowledge. At 12 years of age my knowledge is increasing, it's self-evident. At 22 it's increasing. At 32, knowledge is always increasing. So the question is, this knowledge which is immaterial, who is giving me this knowledge? Is it a book? But a book is physical. A book is just physical text, black and white. Everything about a book is physical. How can something physical grant me something immaterial? It's not possible. Is it a teacher that is giving me knowledge? The teacher is just talking, and the talking are just physical sound waves. Sound waves are physical. Can something physical grant me immaterial knowledge? You see? And so, if knowledge is immaterial, that which grants me knowledge, it has to be immaterial. Because something which is physical can't grant me something which is immaterial. That which grants something to me, that which grants knowledge, immaterial knowledge to me, that grantor has to also be immaterial. There's no other way. And then this doesn't apply to me, it applies to every single person. From the nursery to the university, all the different forms of knowledge which a child to the university professor, that they become a recipient of, the grantor of that knowledge has to be immaterial. Now, with all these forms of knowledge that we have, who is granting it? Look, so far I've only discussed this in rational terms, philosophical terms. I haven't mentioned any Sharia terms like Allah or Quran or anything. It's something that it's self-evident. This is self-evident. Even non-Muslims should understand this, that knowledge is immaterial. I am growing in knowledge day by day. I'm getting it from somewhere. I didn't have it from the beginning. That entity which is giving it me has to be immaterial. A physical entity can't grant me immaterial knowledge. And knowledge, there are so many different types. That which is granting me the knowledge is granting everyone different types of knowledge. So here the conclusion we can make for now is that that which is granting me this immaterial reality called knowledge is pure knowledge itself. Pure knowledge. And every person, depending on their endeavors, takes a share of that infinite pure knowledge that exists. Why do I say infinite pure knowledge exists? Because we see all these different people, from the beginning to the end, all of them learning knowledge. There has to be a source, and that source has to be on a par, in harmony with this immaterial knowledge they're learning. Now I don't want to give labels yet, but this pure knowledge is the source. And everyone takes their own share as a result of their endeavors from that pure knowledge. So that's an important introduction that I have to bear in mind as we progress, because it has different ramifications and implications as we progress. Okay, now, the intellect or aql. Aql literally means prohibiting, shutting off, preserving, in the literal sense. Technically though, in our discussion, it's referring to that faculty that distinguishes, differentiates between good and bad, and which then preserves oneself from inclining towards bad, or shuts one from all forms of vicious traits and dispositions, prohibits bad traits being incorporated in one. That's what we mean by the faculty of aql and the intellect. And it's this that we want to uplift in a given community. Because if this is uplifted, the community more and more will differentiate between good and bad, and not be held back as a result of different parameters. And this aql is an immaterial reality. This faculty of aql, the intellect, is not physical. You can't point to it. Physical things you can point to. Immaterial things you could never point to, something which is immaterial. For example, if I envisage a tree in my mind, that tree in my mind, the mental tree, is something which is immaterial. It's not physical. You can't point to that tree. It's in my mind. You can't point to it, say it's there, no. It's one of the ways where you can differentiate between immaterial things and material things. Material things you can point to. Anyway, so here, this is an immaterial reality, this aql. And it's a dimension of me. Now, with material things, like one's wealth and different applications of one's wealth, people insure their wealth. They protect their wealth from theft, for example. Or they preserve their wealth from being damaged, or they insure it, and do many other things. The more important the wealth is, the more important they assign effort and endeavor in relation to protecting it. But wealth at the end of the day is something physical. It has a beginning, has an end. It's going to end soon. Either existence-wise, it will just decompose into something else, or it's going to be taken away, or it's going to be limited. And so here, when you're dealing with an immaterial treasure like the intellect, which, as we established yesterday, with immaterial things, they will never end. They will be with you to the very end. It is you. And so here you have to put much more emphasis. It's much more important than wealth. And that's why in the ahadith, Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam has said that the worst form of poverty is adamul aql, the absence of aql, the absence of intellect. If you can't differentiate good and bad, and you're bewildered and don't know what to do, that's the worst form of poverty. Much worse than being physically poor, for example. Okay. So with that introduction, I want to go through 3 or 4 different parameters or causes of things which are important in enhancing one's intellect, be it on an individual basis or on a community level. The first is knowledge. And in the Quran, chapter 29, verse 43, وَمَا يَعْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ, that they don't execute aql save for those with knowledge. Meaning that only those with knowledge can execute aql. Only those with knowledge can differentiate between good and bad. Now, knowledge is a very broad term, but I don't want to enter the details of that for now. But without knowledge, therefore, you can't execute aql. And this is explicit in this verse. Now, those with knowledge is not limited to being a scholar. That's only one application. It's open for everyone, the doors to knowledge. And here we see that this is important. Now, what kind of knowledge? It's certainly not only the outer, superficial aspect of knowledge. In chapter 30, verse 7, يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, they know the zahir of the worldly life. But وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ, but in relation to the akhirah, they are heedless, oblivious. They're not attentive to the akhirah. Now look, akhirah is used in opposition to zahiran min al-hayat dunya. It says they know the zahir, the outer aspect of the worldly life. But in relation to the batini aspect of the worldly life, which the Quran calls akhirah, they're ignorant. So the link between the zahir and the batin, most people are ignorant. And so this knowledge in chapter 29 verse 43, where the Quran says that alimun, those with knowledge, can execute aql. This knowledge isn't limited to the outer aspects alone. It's also the inner aspects. And when you look at religion, and you look at the, for example, fiqh, we are all used to the superficial dimensions of fiqh. For example, we have water. Water is qaleel, is kor, is little, is voluminous, and all those different classifications of water. That's very important. And there are rulings here. But this same ruling in fiqh has a batini aspect. The same rulings that we see in fiqh, the physical manifestation that we see in fiqh, has a batini, immaterial manifestation, where water is knowledge. And we have this from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. The water is knowledge. Knowledge is of 2 types, little or voluminous. If your knowledge is little, if a dilemma or a false doctrinal article comes your way and your knowledge is little, you will become najis. The soul will become najis. Look, on a par with the superficial aspects of fiqh, there are batini aspects. We need both for aql to be executed. Because the Quran says they only know the outer aspect. But in relation to the batin, they're ignorant. They're heedless. They're not even attentive to it. And it's very important to be attentive to the batini side of things. Because that's building your akhirah. It's the batin which is building your akhirah. So this is one very important point that has to be borne in mind. And both the zahiri and the batini dimensions of knowledge are necessary. Only then this will activate your aql, enhance your aql, and then that will facilitate, empower the individual or the community to differentiate between haqq and batil. This knowledge, though, there are means of acquiring it, different means. In chapter 62 verse 2, in the middle, it's relation to the Holy Messenger who says, Allah says, Yatlu alayhim ayateh, is reciting the verses for the people, wa yuzakkihim, and he's purifying the people, wa yu'allimuhumul kitab wal hikmah, and teaching them the book, scripture, and hikmah, wisdom, aql. You see? And here, reading the Quran is just a precursor. You have to at least read it before you know how to purify yourself and how to be a recipient of learning from the book and being a recipient of wisdom. But this purification and being taught the book and aql, the naql, scripture, transmissions, and hikmah, wisdom, aql. Here, both are necessary here. In most communities, they have Quranic circles of recitation. It stops there though. We have to go beyond that. Reading the Quran is just a first step to higher things. The purification aspect is important. In order to succeed with the book and with wisdom, to benefit from the book and wisdom, we need a purified soul. Remember the introduction, the more I, the immaterial I, is purified, the more the I can be a recipient of that pure knowledge. And so here, based on this, then the next verse after it, or two verses after that initial verse, verse number 4 in chapter 62, ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ, this is the bounty of Allah. If you were to benefit from the book and wisdom, this is the bounty of Allah. يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ, Allah grants it to whoever wants it. The translation of whoever Allah wants, based on Arabic grammar, is not precise. Although I don't want to go into the Arabic grammar here, it may bore you. This is the bounty of Allah. He grants it to whoever wants it, endeavors for it. وَاللَّهُ ذُو الْفَضْلِ الْعَظِيمِ, and Allah is the possessor of extreme or great bounty. So, if you don't acquire the book and wisdom, and that is, you don't purify yourself to acquire the book and wisdom, here what applies to you would be verse 100 in chapter 10, وَيَجْعَلُ الرِّجْسَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ, that Allah will assign impurities upon those who don't execute aql, who don't differentiate between good and bad, cause and effect. if you don't differentiate between good and bad, if you don't execute your aql, the natural cause and effect response and consequence and side effect is you'll be given impurities out of your own lack of doing, lack of endeavor. So there's no aql, there's going to be assignment by Allah, divine assignment of impurities. If there are no impurities though, i.e. if you zakihim, if you purify yourself, you'll be able to execute aql. You'll succeed. And so based on this first parameter, the first important thing for any community is that the leader of that community has to be a scholar. There has to be a scholar at the head. Now don't get me wrong, scholars, especially myself, I know nothing about management. Nothing. I can't manage a building, manage many things. And that doesn't matter, it's not requiring of me. But what I mean by the scholar doesn't get involved in matters of management or many other, for example, the management of a building or the management of other things. But the knowledge aspect, there has to be a scholar at the head, and that scholar with the knowledge of the Sharia at least, and the tariqah being the batin of religion, he has to survey and monitor things. He can't let haram happen. Now, in many denominations we have, and they may be outside the fold of Islam, like the Agha Khanis, for example, it's like a cult. And that person at the head is not a scholar. And usually they're corrupt. And they're not a scholar, and you see, the whole community gets drifted away from deen. Even though they have the best hospitals, best schools, best this, that. But from deen, they're getting distance more and more. And deen is evolving, it's becoming abrogated when you look at it. And that's why there was a big conference 50, 60 years ago, they didn't accept the Khanis within the fold of Islam, which is a very big statement. Ayatollah Burujeli was then, at that time, was present. The Bohras, for example, have a similar cult-like person at the head. They have a lot of cult-like practices. And in neither of these two does the scholar maintain that position that they should. And with the Khojas, alhamdulillah, the respect towards the maraji is very significant. It's good. But in practice, there may be weaknesses in different communities. As I say, knowledge-wise, education-wise, the Khojas are much ahead of many people within the Shia world. And I'm saying that I've had 10 years of experience in America. I've gone to 20 states. The Khojas were way ahead. The way they think about knowledge. And actually, they all say, let knowledge come from the scholars. And they have a very important adherence to the maraji. Sometimes they have an over-adherence to the maraji. What do I mean by that? The marja is an expert of the Sharia. That's it. They may not be an expert or a mujtahid in aqa'id or tafsir and other things. But in the Sharia, halal and harams, they're experts. But some people look at the marja in all aspects, be it in the Sharia, be it in tafsir, be it in akhlaq, be it in philosophy, everything. That's not the case. We have to be proportionate here. It has to be a proportionate response to each type of scholar. So that is saving the Khojas, this respect they have for the maraji. If that gets lost, that they are very susceptible to these cult-like practices. Now the issue is this, so there has to be a scholar at the head, and the scholar has to be free. The scholar shouldn't be told anything. in relation to knowledge. We need a scholar who is free. He has to be a scholar, has to be free and independent, and criticize anything that he sees which is un-Islamic. And the people have to see that. And he's not saying that out of himself. It's based on religion, based on the Maraj's fatwas, for example, rulings. And if that is compromised, if we don't have a scholar with that independence, the community will be compromised. So look, knowledge is important. The Zahiri aspects of knowledge and the Batini. I mean, look at books like Imam Khomeini's Adab Namaz, the etiquettes of prayer. He goes through all the Batini aspects of everything associated with prayer. It's one of the best manuals in the Batini sciences that I've seen. But if you only limit it to the Zahiri aspect, well, they're going to ask you why. What's happening? Why? They keep on saying, why? You're just telling me do this, do that. Imam Khomeini goes through it because we have it within our Islamic heritage. He's not speaking out of his own. We have it. It's a science. The tariqah is a science of the batin. These things have to be nurtured within our children. And so when you see, although I've never heard of them until this visit of mine, but I've been invited by a place called Ask. Yeah, okay, it's a very natural thing that they would separate and have their own, because they want to ask. They want answers to their questions. And if they're not getting their answers, they're going to separate. It's not a complete separation, I know, it's on goodly terms. But the point is, we have to feed them, satiate them with what they want to know. That's the duty of the scholar. The scholar isn't just to pray and say a few words, and it's always the same words, the same repetition. Look, we have aql, we want to grow. There's no limit to people's aql. The youth want to grow. They'll never stop. If the youth stop in their yearning of their aql to grow, that's a dead community, finished. It's a very bad sign. When it's used just to the repetitions, that's not religion, yes. So, with this first aspect, so we need a scholar at the head, wholly independent, monitors all the Sharia-related matters, doesn't get involved in management because they don't know what management is, but they monitor the halal and the harams of whatever is happening in the community, and they have to be free. If you have that, you'll succeed. But if this person is going to be under the control of a businessman or a non-scholar, and he's worrying about his job, no, this is for the scholars. The scholar shouldn't be after any worldly benefit, shouldn't ask for any worldly incomes. They shouldn't be drowned in the worldly life. A scholar's duty, for the sake of Allah, is to act scholarly. Monitor everything, but not only should they be free from anyone interfering in their scholar's duties, but they should be free and not captivated by the dunya. A scholar that is thinking of a bigger house, a bigger this, more prestige, is going to be problematic. And in America, in England, there are cases where people see the scholar being drowned and they drift away from the scholar. And what's disappointing is that scholar may be a representative of a marja, and by acting in a very worldly manner, people, they shouldn't, but slowly they become drifted from the marja. Representatives of maraji have a very important responsibility. Some people are weak in their faith when they see a scholar who's thinking of a better and better car, or other worldly gains, well, it's only natural to expect a young 16, 17-year-old to look elsewhere. They'll get disappointed. So this knowledge aspect, which according to the verse of the Quran is crucial for the actualization of aql, this has to be led by the scholar. This is important. The community shouldn't, if it's compromised from above, the community has to protest, demonstrate, and say, no, we can't accept this. It doesn't matter for a community, even if it's a bohra or other community, to have a leader who's managing everything. But it has to be in the halal way, first of all, and nothing un-Islamic should be accepted. The scholar has to be free. Okay, that's one thing. The next is something which is a barrier to this execution of aql and the intellect, or prejudices which a given community may have, certain taboos. Every culture has its own taboos, and obstinate behavior. This obstinacy and these prejudices that we have in a culture, in any given culture, these are barriers. Look, everyone has a fitrah, this innate nature. And everyone's fitrah, Muslim or non-Muslim, they're seeking the truth. But where the problem lies is sometimes you, as a result of what your ancestors may say, you may presuppose a certain truth and then try to just support that truth that you have presupposed. And then you want to relay it and impose it upon everyone in the community as a problem. These kind of prejudices is going to cause problems. And it may be minimal in one generation, but generation after generation, it's going to exponentially increase, and it'll get out of control, and people will exit. They just want to leave. And sometimes when you can't explain something, but say, this is it, without explaining it, that has the same effect as these taboos of any given culture. This has to be no biases must get in the way in this journey towards the truth, and it shouldn't compromise one's knowledge. So here, I don't want to undermine culture. Culture is important. Every culture, most of all cultures are, benign and specific to a certain people. But the elements of a given culture which can be detrimental, the scholar has to enter here. And the more it's let alone and let loose, these negative aspects of a culture which impair one's or compromises one's journeying towards true knowledge, the more it's let loose, the more it's going to cause problems. At least, one has to surgically, if necessary, try to sort this out. And sometimes you may see certain elements of a given community, they come out and they speak against these things. And then the main community may get disappointed and may even regard that new arising phenomenon as heretical and say, no, this has nothing to do, you're wrong, this, that, and you put them aside. That's not the way we have to go forward. And the community has to be very fatherly in relation to people who may have these ideas of religion. It may be wrong, but we shouldn't disassociate from them. We shouldn't be scared of bringing them, speaking with them. The scholar has to guide them. What are you saying? Come here, tell us what you're saying, and we can guide you. But disassociating them is an indication of fear from the community. It means they don't have what it takes, and therefore they have to find solutions for this. Where is their problem lying in? And how are they going to sort new arising difficulties? Although they're not difficulties, everyone has to be under the same umbrella. Okay. Another, according to Ahadith, another important aspect to enhance aql is experience, tajrubah. People have different experiences. Some people out of age, old age, they've lived 80, 90 years, they have a lot of experiences. What a 16-year-old is about to embark on, that 8-year-old has seen everything. One has to benefit from their experiences. And once I was a translator for Ayatollah Sistani, which was a Hajj group, not a Hajj group, a Ziyarah group in Karbala and Najaf, and I was just the translator. I had the honor to translate, and it only happened once so far. And then he said, Ayatollah Sistani said, that specialists in whatever field, be you a doctor, architect, graphic designer, specialists in any field of knowledge, the community has to hold regular meetings where the specialist is sitting behind the table and sharing his knowledge, up-to-dating people with what they have learned and what they are specializing in, and for people to be more and more aware of these things. And in the ahadith it says experience. Now experience can entail many things, but this enhances the aql. When specialists give you their experiences, it will enhance your power to differentiate between good and bad. And it can be in any field. Once a week, at least one specialist of the community to come and share their ideas. That is something which, just one example which comes to mind. And finally, a question and answer approach. Learning critical thinking. We see this in the Quran, where Allah is asking a question. Don't you see the camel, how it's created? Don't you see the heavens, it's created in such a way, the rain? Asking questions. Because when you want to dissect a certain subject matter, it's to break into the subject matter and explore and discover the truth of that subject matter. The best weapon to break into it and discover its reality is questions. You keep on bombarding it with questions, then answering them accordingly, then more questions. You keep on doing it until it explodes. And then you'll be illuminated with the truth of whatever the subject matter is. And here, critical thinking has to be explained very slowly so that people can digest it. Things like, what does the physical realm mean? What is the immaterial realm? Things which even non-Muslims can get. And we have many important scholars such as Ayatollah Hassan Zada Amuli Rahmatullah alayhi. He has books where he's really dissecting philosophically, very Tawheed, Nubuwwah, Ma'ad. He's dissecting without even mentioning a verse of the Holy Quran. Look, he's dissecting it in a way that even you can accept Ma'ad. Even a kafir would accept it because of a step-by-step critical analysis of self-evident principles. And this too is important for the community to learn, for our youth to have this kind of thinking processes. Okay, so I think I'll stop here. They were just a few of the different parameters which I thought about. And just one last point, I'll end here. Yes, I don't want to sound controversial or anything by saying this, and I don't want to disappoint anyone by saying it, and feel free to cancel whatever you want from this. In America and England, we have many mosques which qualify as Masjid-e-Dirar. Masjid-e-Dirar are mosques where the enemy is abusing, and it's used for the services of the enemy. It's in the Quran. They used to create disunity. They use it to bring wrong forms of belief. There's one mosque in Florida where the police regularly come there and educate the people there about how to see what's happening in Gaza and how to respect the Zionist regime. And that is something very worrying. That is very worrying. If I was a manager, I would say it's haram to go to such a mosque. In England, we have negative signs in different places. I don't want to go into detail, but it's happening more and more. Tanzania and Kenya, they seem safe for now, from what I've seen. So I urge you to stay very focused and don't fall in the traps that many have fallen into. And really request from your scholars that we don't want our centers, any of them, to fall into this category of Masjid-e-Dirar. When the 12th Imam comes, these mosques will be destroyed. Masjid-e-Dirar happened in the time of the Holy Prophet. The order was given to destroy it. And then one of the companions, after the destruction, used the wood of that mosque for his own house. He said, well, it's only wood, I'll use it for my own house and everything. And they never gave birth to any children. This is one of the side effects of remnants of Masjid-e-Dirar was this. The barakah is so little, is negligent, is negative, that using a bit of Masjid-e-Dirar for something else, you're against what they did, but you're using just physical things from that mosque. It led to such side effects. They never had children, for example. Even the animals, they won't build their nests in a place where remnants of Masjid-e-Dirar was present. I'm saying there's a lot of side effects, spiritual side effects. It distances you from Allah. And as I say, Kenya, Tanzania, so far, they are preserving everything, as I can see from the outside, is okay. And this has to be maintained. You shouldn't fall in the trap, shouldn't be captivated by the dunya. The leaders have to really pay attention, and inshallah you will succeed. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala tahirin.